good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we've got a big room, but I'll stay aimed this way, and then our online people can also focus in. And again, if other folks join us, we're the Alternating Lunch Workshop. But let me do just a quick introduction. I've talked, I think, with most of you, but I'm an attorney with the National Center for Life and Liberty. And our organization works with a lot of churches across America. We're honored to be the general counsel here, for example, at Colonial or with the seminary. We also do work with the churches, big and small, across America. And I just want to give you maybe an opening word of encouragement while we talk about liabilities or different issues. How many believe the church is the hope of America? And I do not believe that the hope is in a courtroom. I don't believe it's in the State House. I don't believe it's in the White House. And I think we should vote and be involved. But how many believe it is in the church house? And so I definitely am honored to be a friend and to partner with churches. And as you came in, I gave you a few materials. I would ask that you, at some point during the workshop, fill out the card. And we'll make sure that you are receiving our newsletter. The card may focus on support. That's not the point of it. We would just like to give you a free subscription to our newsletter, make sure you're receiving materials. And so if you did not get one, they're up here in the front. You can get one at the close of the service. But let's talk for just a moment about our topic, which is the whole online world. Now, if you weren't online, how many understand COVID pushed you online? We're in a different world. I mean, I tease that every parent in America became a homeschooler, and a number of them don't like their kids that much, right? It just, we have dealt with a mammoth change in our culture and how church and ministry are being done. Just to give you a personal observation, I have sat in my office, not left, and appeared in 4 different states in one afternoon. I mean, and the judge controls the hearing, and you're zoomed in and zoomed out, and if you say, well, I need to talk to my client, they zoom you over here, and you go sit over there a while, then they bring you back. And I mean, I was dressed up a little more, but you could be sitting there in a pair of shorts. As long as you got the coat and tie on the neck up, you look just fine. And so it's a different world, and churches have been caught in this vortex and are trying to figure out where to land, what to do, and in particular, to do it well. And how many believe anything we do, we should do it excellently as unto the Lord? But then also to avoid unnecessary liability. Now, let me begin that there's no way to totally avoid liability. The only way to totally avoid liability is to die. And how many understand we don't want to do that quite yet? So the bottom line is we're looking to maximize what we can do online, but then to minimize the unnecessary risk. And it's really opened up a whole new world that churches historically did not have to deal with. When I graduated from Duke Law School and started practicing about 30 years ago, I would get asked a couple of questions. Question number 1, is it legal? And by the way, how many believe that's a good question to ask a lawyer, right? Is it legal? Can we do this? Can we not do this? We want to go into this park, or we want to start this school. Is it legal? And that was a good question to ask. But then we would get asked another question, which is kind of dealing with how is it working for others? And so is it effective would be a question we would get asked. You know, does other pastors, people come to a conference like this and they say, Colonial is doing this. Is it working? Is it not working? Will it work for a smaller church? Will it work for a larger church? And evaluating effectiveness has always been a question that churches and ministries have wanted to know. But now, number 3, we are into a new question that is capturing our universe as we become more and more connected, as the smartphones grow smarter than the people. And one of the things that we're having to deal with is, what are the optics? How is it being perceived by the outside world? If I say, you know, riots or police or protesters or murders, you know, everybody has a perspective because of the different optics that are involved. They are looking at, you know, they saw a video clip, they saw something went viral, something trended. And I would like to tell you that most of you will not wake up one day and have a lawsuit take out your church. It could happen, but how many hope and pray it doesn't happen? But as a general rule, the internet, the online world, the haters, the reputational terrorists, you can use whatever names you want, when they turn on you, can be very vicious. And how many understand in a matter of weeks, things can flip where your reputation, your testimony, your identity is completely flipped around. And so I'm encouraging you to realize that as you're looking at all of this, as you're thinking about online, you have to remember rule number 1 to public speaking, and we all know what it is. Know your audience. You know, I stand in here and I'm talking to church leaders, and I'm speaking with you as people that understand the faith, you love the church, and in a measure, this is almost a turning client. I realize this is a seminar and a webinar, but we're conversing, we're talking, we're having a conversation as leaders. If I were to go on Fox TV tonight and do a national broadcast from their DC bureau, how many understand that's not a church audience? Okay, there'll be some Christians, there'll be some pastors, but that's a worldwide audience. It's millions of people. And so I have to understand if I go talk about certain issues, I have to know my audience. And probably one of the bigger mistakes that churches are making online, and certainly as COVID has kind of bumped them online, is they're treating it like their church audience, not realizing they are now before a worldwide audience. And understanding that you're talking to a different group, that you have opened up. If you say, what we've done at our church is we just Facebook Live, we just throw up the services, we just kind of do church like we've always done, and we now video that out. I would caution you that that is the riskiest way to enter the online world, that you are putting yourself in some degree of jeopardy. Now, you say, well, David, I want to have a plan. I want to move forward with something successful. Let me give you a couple of things to think about in this workshop. Number 1, as you put together your online church plan, you have to evaluate your people. You have to evaluate your people. Now, it might be just you. You might be the only guy, and so you have to evaluate your abilities, what you can do online. You may say, hey, I've got this guy in my church. He designs websites, or he's a social media guru, or I have this teenager. And by the way, how many understand the young people are very useful in this world? Okay, so, I mean, don't you say, yeah, I don't know, I don't like how the guy looks. He's got, tattoos and places. I didn't think you were supposed to tattoo, but he seems to know this. Well, this may be something where you can disciple and use him and work with him or her. So I would encourage you, you need to put together a team. Now, this is not different than what you do in other areas of ministry. If I were to say church safety, church security, you're going to tell me, well, we have a safety team, we have a security team, we work through, we have some guys, and some of those guys may not qualify to be deacons because of their backgrounds or their temperament, but they're pretty good at watching the parking lot or monitoring the door. And so you have a safety team. A children's ministry, you have a team. People that work in Awana or teach Sunday school are involved in your children's ministry, and you do the background checks, you do different things, and you have that group. Well, I would encourage you that the online world is becoming a bigger part of what your church is going to be doing, and you need to put together that team. So it may just be you and a guy, maybe a little group, again, the size of your church, what you have, but evaluate your people. Then number 2, you need to develop your process. You need to develop your process. Now, I'm encouraging you not to just dump your church service online. You can certainly broadcast it, you can live stream it, let people watch it, but if you're really trying to develop the online world, you're going to have to start understanding how people look at things, and you have to kind of decide what your goals are. If the goal is really, we don't want to really be online that much, we're just trying to let people watch from home and then we're done, well, that's one type of goal. But if your goal is, no, we really want to expand, we want to reach more, we want to communicate with the broader audience, you have to understand in the online world, and this is hard for preachers, shorter is better. If people log into a video and they see 28 minutes, 38 minutes, 48 minutes, 59 minutes. You know what? You are going to lose 99.999% of your online world. I mean, and the young people, and again, I'm not saying it's all wholesome or healthy, but you can see it in these, Snapchats and TikToks and all these little short little bursts and these little things and these little things that are quick and snappy and pithy. And so if you're looking to use your online world to grow your church, to expand your church, to be more presence out there, you've got to think about, how do I take my material and how do I take part of my sermon and put a 1-minute clip up, or break it into 5 pieces for little daily devotionals or different things. And so, again, you got to think about your process. You have a lot of content. You've got a lot of content that you're generating from your preaching, your studies, from your different resources, but you've got to decide, what are my goals? What type of process are we going to have? Then let me give you number 3. You need to protect your assets. You need to protect your online assets. Now, this one, I get the phone call regularly. This guy, he was great. He put up our website. He got us online. He did our Facebook. We were jamming. It was incredible. And he left the church mad. And we don't have any of our stuff. And he just put bad things about the pastor on the Facebook page. And we can't get to our web thing. And we don't know how to go in. May I tell you right now, you need to be the password police. You've got to make sure that you lock down tight, while people are friendly, all of your intellectual property, okay? Now, you say, well, this guy set it up and he put it in his own name. Well, while he's friendly, he needs to transfer it to the church, or shut it down and open a new one in the name of the church. But you need to make sure that you lock down before you invest. I have a website, and you can visit it. It's ncll.org, okay? And our organization, because of that website, has invested in it. We've sent pastors to it. We use it. We have materials on it. And it's a valuable part of what we do. People can find us and learn about us. But if we were to lose that, that would be very damaging to our organization. And I get a couple phone calls a week from churches that have people that have gone rogue. And by the way, this can be employees, it can be volunteers, it can be members, it can be outside people. And we've lost control of our digital world. So just make sure that you have it locked down. You say, well, this guy's kind of managing it. Well, he needs to sign an agreement. Everything is owned by the church, all the passwords, and he needs to provide them to you. You say, well, if I had the password, I wouldn't know what to do with it. Doesn't matter. As long as you have the password, you can then find somebody that would help you. But make sure that you lock down and have all of your materials. And then your next item with protecting your assets is who owns what's out there. And for most of you, you'd say, well, the church, okay? But be careful, too, if you're a pastor and you're trying to develop a preaching ministry that's separate from the church, or you want to own the content to your sermons, or if you have somebody doing musical arrangements, you can look at, some churches have gone very large with this. They create a whole industry. But just make sure that there's an understanding. If the church is putting it out, do they own it or don't they own it? And just making sure that there's no confusion down the road. Hey, we had beloved pastor for 20 years, we marketed, we did all this stuff, and now he's leaving and he wants to take everything and we don't have anything. So just make sure that there's an understanding as to who owns all that content. Is it yours forever, or is it belonging to somebody else? So you got to evaluate your people, decide your process, work to protect your assets. Now, the next one I want to talk about is you have to have some policies to help avoid liability. And there's some areas that I would tell you are maybe little landmines, things you want to avoid stepping on. So let's talk about a few of them. Number one would be defamation. Now, what is defamation? You said something, and you can use libel, slander, you can expand it out. But basically, you said something bad about somebody, and you publicly put it out. Well, when you start talking about the online world, you didn't just put it to a group. You didn't put it to a seminar group or to a congregation. You put it to the world. And sometimes pastors want to overshare. So let me give you an example. I just talked to Susie, and Susie has really been witnessing to her coworker, Bob. Now, Bob's got an alcohol problem, and he's drinking a lot, but his marriage is on the rocks, and things are going bad for Bob. And so I think we all need to be praying. Now, Susie Smith, you stand up right there, because we're going to pray for you that God will let you reach Bob before his marriage blows up and before his boss finds out he's drinking. And you tell all this information. Now, if it was just the church and we were just praying, how many understand it's probably going to be pretty protected? That goes out online, and all of a sudden, Susie's boss says, hey, I didn't know Bob was an alcoholic, or Bob's wife says, I didn't know that you're telling this woman about us, and all of a sudden, you can see where a lot of things can get out of hand in a hurry. And so you've got to start thinking when you're putting it online, it is different than sharing it with the church. So thinking in terms of generic, okay? If I were to tell you I helped a church in North Carolina and here's what we had to do, okay, that's more generic. You understand the region, you understand it's a church, but you don't know what church, you don't know what pastor, and I could tell you a story and not violate their privacy or their confidentiality. So as a church, you need to start thinking about what do we share with the online world, and if it's deemed to be untrue. Now, truth is always a defense, but then you run into item number 2, which is you've publicly disseminated otherwise private information, okay? And so let me give you the classic. I just went to the hospital. They wouldn't let me in. Bob has COVID. And, Bob's lungs are bad, and they're not sure Bob's going to make it. And so, and if you've been around Bob, you might have COVID. So now everybody's in a panic, right? Well, you just publicly disseminated a lot of private information about Bob, and he may not care, but how many understand in today's world people get weird about their personal information? And they're like, well, I told you that as a pastor. I told you that confidentially. I told you, I didn't say you could tell everybody. And when I told you, I never thought you'd put it on the internet, and I never thought it would get out there. Because generally when they're upset with you, someone has seen it that they didn't want to know about it. So be careful with your comments, your public dissemination. Also, you need to be thinking about copyright. Now, copyright is the usage of somebody else's material without their permission. And obviously, the answer to copyright is get permission, okay? And we know that with licenses and other things. But just be aware, online changes a lot of the permissions. So if you buy a book, and the book is a pastor's teaching series, and you buy the workbooks, and you say, okay, we got permission to use these 10 books in our study group because we bought all this stuff. That doesn't mean you have permission to put it all online and let another 100 people watch it. Music, same thing. Because you have permission under CCLI to sing the song, broadcast the words, put them up on the screen, completely legal, but there are specific licenses for broadcast. Now, it runs the gamut. If you're a commercial radio station, you're going to put it out on a national network, it's more expensive. You're going to pay quite a bit more. If you're putting it out in a more limited audience, you won't pay as much, but you will pay more than if you just put it to your church. So back to your team and your people, you need to make sure, for example, if we're going to put our entire service online and we're going to broadcast it, is that permissible under our copyright licenses? Be careful. Because it's on YouTube doesn't mean you can rebroadcast it necessarily. Okay, you say, well, wait, I pulled it off of YouTube and I was just going to show it to my church. Well, that a lot of times is acceptable because it's public use and you're just showing it to your church. But when your church then takes it and puts it back on the internet, that is a rebroadcast. And so I'm just sharing with you as you think about sermon preparation, music, other things, not everything needs to be broadcast. Now, you say, well, we don't want people to be left out. We want them to feel involved. And if you're going to show it one time, make sure you've got the permission. But a lot of churches have really evaluated and almost reached a point where they say, we're going to start with the sermon. You know, it's hard to hear the music, it's hard to see it, the announcements feel awkward. You know, it's not really a good online experience. I mean, it's hard to, you know, our singers aren't that good anyway. You know what I mean? So there is some of that that goes on. Now, you know, please understand you can put other things in or have fillers or have different music if you wish, but just make sure that you're thinking about what are we saying, what are we disseminating, and do we have the copyright? Now, I do want to tell you here, and I'm kind of warning you here, once you put it online, you lose control. Okay? You lose control. So let's talk about a few things you lose control over. A lawyer that wants to sue your church and says, there was a business meeting, and you guys talked about something in your children's ministry, and I want to get the entire video and play it for the jury. And you go, now wait a minute. That was a private church meeting. We were just talking as church. Did you put it online? And the minute you put it online, you've about lost your ability to try to cloak it in privacy. So you and I can have a conversation. You can walk up to me and say, you know, Attorney Gibbs, we've got a problem in our church. Could you give me some legal advice? Glad to do that. We do that all the time. That's private. But if you say, hey, I just talked to Attorney Gibbs, and he told me at our church we can do A, B, C, D, and I told him this, and he told me that, how many understand we just lost all the privilege? Why? Because you put it out there. You publicly shared it. So I'm just telling you, anything that's on the internet can turn around and create a discoverable issue for you in court. It can also be used by dissidents. How many have ever had anybody leave your church mad? Anybody ever had that experience? You know, and I call it blessed subtraction. We're glad they're gone. But the bottom line is all that stuff online gives them a treasure trove of information to try to use against you. And they can post it. They can use little snippets. You say, wait a minute. That was me preaching. They can't take my sermon there, and I said something dumb, and I didn't mean it that way, but they're putting it up online. They're making fun of me, and I don't like it. Okay, well, when you put it online, you've kind of lost the ability to control it. So your copyright, your ownership, your intellectual property. Now, if they showed up at church and they said, okay, David's up there, and I'm going to get my little camera out. I'm going to do a secret video, and I'm going to record him. Okay, we can probably get that taken down. Okay, if it's out of context, they didn't have permission, it was you preaching, we're going to be able to say, hey, that person doesn't own the rights to that. That was the pastor and the church. But when they're pulling it off our website or our Facebook feed or we've lost all rights. So you lose control when people turn rogue on you. And then let me give you one more, media. Media gets it. So, you know, somebody in your church gets arrested, okay? And obviously that's a bad moment. We don't want anybody to get arrested, but you're kind of dealing with a media fallout, and you're like, well, you know, this is terrible. We love and don't want children hurt, and this guy is accused of doing some bad things, and you try to look good. Well, then the media goes back and picks out your child beating sermon. And by the way, how many believe every pastor has one sermon that can get taken out of context if they want to, right? You know, spare the rod, spoil the child, beat them till they wail. And, you know, you say something, you're like, wow, that isn't quite how I meant it. But now that snippet is running. You know, the pastor that encourages beating now has somebody arrested in his church. And you're like, wow, we got to get that down. We got to stop. The media is making us look terrible. Well, when you put it online, it's all fair game. They don't have to ask your permission. They don't have to do it. They're like, all we do is put it on TV. Y'all put it to the whole world. So you've lost all your ability to control what gets out there. And so just recognize what you put online creates some issues for you. Now, I'm going to give you a few practicals here just to think about. And again, a lot of what I'm telling you here, you don't have to do, but it minimizes liability and lets you still be effective. Don't archive all your sermons. You know, don't create the repository of 200. And I say this with a smile during COVID. You know, once your mother and 3 friends have watched them, how many understand some of them don't get watched that much, right? And all you're creating is this big library where people can go back through. Now, you can keep them. Don't throw them away. You have valuable content there. But think about, you know, what really do we want as our online presence? So, you know, COVID, we're doing a video of the service, but then does that stay up for a week? Does it stay up for a day? Does it stay up for a month? You know, and then does it go down? And I encourage churches to think about maybe your most recent sermon, maybe a sermon on salvation, short sermon, a 5 to 8 minute, how you can come to know the Lord, and then maybe an introduction to your church, and again, short, thinking, people don't want 30 minutes, let me show you every room. They want that quick, here's what our church is all about, here's what you could do. And if you have those 3 things up, most recent, how to get saved, and what our church is about, that's probably a pretty decent video presence for a lot of churches. Now, you may, for your social media world, want little snippets out of your sermon, send those out, you can tweet them out, but you don't necessarily need them out there all the time in a library. They go out, they blast, and they're done, and you see how they respond. So just think about when you put it online, you lose control. And so maybe limiting what is just up there indefinitely. Now, if you say it's a classic, my sermon last year on voting, it was a masterpiece. Well, use it again. Put it back up. Say, hey, we're pulling it out of our archives. Here's a great sermon pastor preached on, voting last year, and everybody was blessed by it, so we're putting it back up for a week. And blast it out, see what happens, and take it down. And the internet is this constantly evolving world. So just realize when you just dump it, which a lot of churches do, it's just dumping in, sermon after sermon, it's laying there and you've lost control over all that content. So think about the liability, think about the control, and then let me give you one more, and then we'll take some questions from the floor. Realize when people are doing things for you online, they fall within your scope. Now, what I mean by scope, that could be employment or volunteer, but let's just talk candidly. You're liable for what they do. So you say, well, David, there's this guy, and he puts stuff online. I'm not responsible for what he says. Well, if it's going out under your name, if it's going out under the church's name, you're liable. So you've inherited all these liabilities with your online world. And you want to have policies to protect yourself. So let me give you a few to think about. Posting or texting while you're driving. Oh, man, I just heard something on the news. I got to get that up. I'm going to put that on our church's website. And boom, boom, boom. And they're messing with their phone. And pow, they smash into somebody. Liability for the church. You say, yeah, it was his car. That was dumb. He shouldn't have been doing that. But they're going to say, well, were you posting for the church? And you just bought the liability. So you want to make sure that if you do have people, staff, volunteers, and others, that you have pretty clear policies on when it's appropriate or not appropriate, certainly in vehicles or other things, to not be doing this work. A couple other areas, harassment. Somebody is using, church resources, and they're bothering somebody. I mean, we live in the Me Too world, or we live in, they're messaging somebody, a lady that visited the church, and they're harassing, and she feels like she's being treated inappropriately. Well, just realize their behavior does inure back when they're acting on your behalf, even though it's online. Another one is child protection. Child protection. People that abuse children will generally start their grooming, which is the process of luring them into inappropriate actions. It all happens online. And so you want to be thinking about, okay, we got a youth pastor, and he's hip, and he's cool, and he does stuff, and he texts all these kids. Well, that does set up a big liability if anything inappropriate does happen. What is your policy? Is it okay for your 30-year-old youth pastor to text 14-year-old girls alone in their homes? You go, well, Mr. Gibbs, you made that sound kind of creepy. I mean, he's a nice guy. Well, let me say this. If it comes up in discovery that your youth pastor is accused of doing something against this girl, and we can show that he texted her 600 times in the last month, how many of you right there say, boy, that's not good? I mean, now, they all could have been Bible verses. They all could have been, what's up, how you doing, praying for you, win a soul. I mean, they could all be really nice. But you know what? You go 600 times. That's just too much. There's too much contact. There's too much being torn down. And so thinking about even your communication policies, I have encouraged, and I would encourage you to think about the two-worker rule to be expanded to include online or digital communication. So if the youth pastor says, I'm going to take this 15-year-old in a room by myself, we'd go, oh no, time out, we don't allow that. That's isolation, we don't allow you to be, that's not a good policy. But we allow him to have all this emotional opportunity to talk with her online. And by the way, that sometimes I think youth pastors get sucked into stuff, and I'm not saying just youth pastors, anybody gets sucked into things that they otherwise wouldn't. You know, they start counseling. And so this girl's like, you know, I broke up with my boyfriend. Oh, he's an idiot. Well, he said I'm dumb. Well, I think you're smart. Well, he says I'm ugly. I think you're beautiful. And I think in the beginning, this guy was like maybe trying to be nice. But how many understand it's the communication and the intensity and the frequency, boundaries come down, sin sets in, and all of a sudden now, you know, he's telling this girl his wife's going to die and pray for her, and the Lord's brought her into his life, and she's the one for him. And how many understand an adult can manipulate a child, even, you know, street smart kids can be manipulated, certainly vulnerable kids. So just be thinking about, you know, your online world. The people who speak under the auspices of your church, you've bought their liability. So like I've encouraged, and by the way, if anything I've said creates an interest or a question in your mind, we can give you policies. So you can email the NCAA and we will make sure that you get anything you want. But the 2-worker rule, very, very important. And then let me give you a couple more, and then I'll take questions from the floor. Wage and hour. If you are employing somebody and they're always messing around with the church website, and they're always playing with the Facebook, and they're always doing stuff, and they're an hourly employee, they could be entitled to compensation for all that time. So you do want to, when you go back to putting your plan together, create some boundaries. You know, look, we're going to give you 4 hours a week. That's all you get. This is how it's done. If you can't do it in the 4 hours, then don't do it. And, you know, and I'm not saying they can't volunteer and do a little extra, but just watch that you just don't let somebody start going crazy on you, and all of a sudden they turn around and go, well, you know, the pastor made me hold the camera during church, and then the pastor made me come early, and then the pastor made me do this. Then I had to edit it all afternoon. It was all on a weekend, and I'm entitled to double time and overtime. And you can quickly, once you start compensating, get into a lot of wage and hour complexity. Probably better, quite honestly, to use volunteers. I mean, that's always nice. It's free. But if you are going to use someone, maybe not let them be an employee. You know, maybe set up more on a contract basis and just say, you know, we're hiring you to do these services and your own discretion on your own time. You're not doing it on our equipment, you know. But then in that agreement, any disputes are by binding Christian arbitration, and making sure that you own everything, all the passwords, all the things, because you just don't need some guy to go, well, I developed your Facebook. I got your 1,000 likes or friends or contacts, and they want to walk out the door, but making sure that you protect your ownership. And then one more, and I'll open for questions, political statements. This is probably where you want to have some partition, maybe between you and the church, okay? So some of you are political activists, some of you find politics distasteful. That's your personal viewpoint, okay? But just don't do it in the church. Now, you can preach issues, you can preach strong, you can use examples. I want you to be men of God in the pulpit. So I'm not here to say you can't speak in the church, but it's too easy for the IRS to say, hey, this Bible church here, this Baptist church here, looks like they endorsed a candidate. They endorsed Mr. Trump. They endorsed Mr. Biden. That's a clear violation. And you say, well, right now, didn't Mr. Trump say he's not going to enforce it? Yes, he has. But Congress did not change the law. So Mr. Biden could walk in, there's a 3-4 year statute of limitations on a lot of that, and immediately enforce it. I mean, it is the law that you're not to have a nonprofit, a church. And I always say church time or dime to endorse or criticize a candidate. So with that being the case, just watch your online presence. Somebody's like, hey, I just shared this Trump rally. I just shared this Biden quote. Just be careful that your church online presence doesn't look like it's gone political, because that could put the tax-exempt status of your ministry in some jeopardy. I am going to open the floor. It looks like we have just a couple of minutes before we are done. So if you have a question, I will repeat it for our online people. But does anybody have a question on the online world or safely navigating it? Yes, sir.
Dave,
Yeah, let me hit this. Facebook is getting to be more controlling of the content that goes out. And right now, just to give you this, I'm going to be in litigation before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in December. It's actually now a Zoom hearing, they told me. But the issue there, Amazon denied services to D. James Kennedy Ministries. He's the old Presbyterian from Florida, now deceased, but the media ministry continues. And so we are watching where the Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and D.C. are all blending together into a complicated stew. I believe Facebook, it sounds like they treated you unfairly. Okay, an outreach of your church should not be deemed a social activist group. Now, I want to say that softly, obviously not looking at their postings, because if they go, we're the Tea Party of, this church, and we're taking out the president, okay, well, now maybe they've gone a little over the top under the auspices of the church. But we would be glad to look at that. We've had good success without going crazy, threatening Facebook, just saying, hey, we think you guys made a mistake here, our client, here's what we can do, and we can push back. But be prepared for more and more online regulation, okay? And the problem with the digital world is too easy to censor. I mean, the word Baptist, pick it out. The word Jesus, pick it out. The word salvation, pick it out. One way, pick it out. I mean, there's things they can look for and really put it under scrutiny. So I think your group's getting treated unfairly. But let me take your question and add one more thing to it. You say, well, this is a pro-life group in our church, or this is a homeschool group in our church, or this is a Sunday school class in our church. You are liable for what happens. So just make sure that you hang on to the control of those domains, that information. Information has power to it. And just make sure that those assets, they call it IP, intellectual property, just make sure that the church is retaining control over it. And just realize if that group has a meeting and they all gather under the auspices of the church, whatever's online, if there's a molestation, if there's a harassment, if there's a discrimination, if there's a violation, you, the church, are responsible. So somebody says, well, you're being a little controlling. No, we're putting policies in place to help minimize litigation or liability for everybody. But just recognize, just things that are happening under the auspices of the church is the church. Yes, sir.
If a church has a Facebook page.
Yes, sir.
And a ministry within the church has a Facebook page, and the leader of that ministry has a private Facebook, a personal Facebook page, is his personal Facebook page an extension of the church?
The answer to that is generally not. I'm going to repeat it for our online. We have a Facebook page, church. We have a group in the church Facebook page, and then the leader of that group has a personal page. So we have 3 pages. The 2 that are church, okay? The personal page. Now, you got to be a little careful that the personal page doesn't become a third church page, okay? Because if it's all church all over it, it looks like it's the church. But if it's truly his personal page, and I mean, this could be the pastor. I mean, it could say, I'm the pastor of First XYZ Church. But I would encourage that pastor to make sure that if he uses his personal page for political or controversial statements, that he preface it even with some disclaimers. While I have the privilege to pastor a church, I am just sharing my personal opinion on this post. Our church has a totally separate online presence. This is just me as a citizen speaking. A little preface just to make it clear that this is not the church's position. And you see that in the world where, organizations, Franklin Graham, he leads a big organization. He wants to endorse Donald Trump. He doesn't go, our organization's getting behind him. He says, now, I'm speaking personally. I'm not speaking for the organizations. So as long as there's some partition or division, that is acceptable. But again, be careful, because if he's using his Facebook page, personal, to lure children, and you go, wow, and he's connected to us, well, then it could start triggering where there could be some liability. But if he's just saying goofy things. Now, again, realize also, if you are putting things out there, that does reflect back on the church. And how many believe if you're going to be in leadership, you need to have a testimony? So, if somebody's out there, and let's just even use modesty. I mean, somebody's out there and they're, kind of lewdly dressed, they're consuming alcohol, they're partying, it's all over their personal Facebook, and they want to be a leader in your church, well, you could certainly say, that's not a good testimony. Your online testimony is hurting. And so you're certainly welcome to evaluate it, but you wouldn't necessarily be liable for what he posts, to answer your question. All right, I will stay up front because I do know you guys have lunch coming up, and I don't want to keep you long from that. But if you would be kind enough, and again, we won't bother you, but we'll make sure you get a subscription to our newsletter. And if you just take the front of that card and just fill out your church information, we'll know you're here. If you got an email or phone or something, put it on there. And then turn those into me before you go. I know we're kind of socially distancing, so I won't handshake or hug, but glad to answer any questions or anything that y'all want to talk about during the break. And then we'll repeat this workshop for the second lunch group, and that will start in about 15 minutes. So thank you.